Welcome to the Connect to Disconnect podcast. I'm your host, Indiana Sacasa, and today we have Brian Roller, founder and personal injury attorney with the Roller Law Group. Hi, Brian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, America. That sounds like the news.
Good morning, Miami.
Good morning, Miami. Good morning, America.
Soon it's going to be, it will be America because we're here actually on the eve of the national championship game, which will feature University of Miami against Indiana University.
Against myself.
So I see actually next door, I think right next door is where the Indiana University team is staying. So there's signs everywhere saying, "Welcome, Indiana."
Oh, really? I haven't seen that. It says, "Welcome, Indiana." Everyone's welcoming me. They're so
They know
excited
you're
to
coming.
have me in town. Yes. Well, thank you again for being here. And before we dive into some interesting cases, because we're going to get to that information, I want to know a little bit more about yourself. So I know you're originally from New Jersey, but you also lived in Wisconsin, New York. So
That's right.
Can you share a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was born in New Jersey. I was raised there, but I kind of wanted to get out of there as I got older and moved on to university. I went to University of Wisconsin, a great Big Ten university, large school, 40,000 people, which ended up being a great experience for me. But then I found my way back to the East Coast for law school, Cardozo Law School. Cardozo would be, I think at the time, it would have been the number one law school in the state of Florida if it was in Florida. It's in New York, so it wasn't. It was not the top law school in New York, but it would have been the top law school in Florida at the time that I was there. And that was a great experience. And I got my start working for a commercial law firm, a large law firm of almost 1,000 lawyers, coming directly out of law school, learning about large commercial litigation, a little bit different than what I'm doing today.
How was that when you were in commercial practice? Because you did mention you were traveling around the U.S.
So that actually precedes that. So in New York, I was working for large corporations and a large law firm in New York. It was, like I said, about 1,000 lawyers. It was a little too corporate for me. I'm not necessarily the guy who wants to be in a box and, working for large corporations, having my, little slice of responsibility. I prefer working with smaller organizations and people, helping them out personally and having more of a personal relationship with my clients. And sort of that's how I transitioned, I think, professionally when I eventually made the move down to Florida with my wife, who I met in New York, but who originally was from Florida, Plantation.
Okay.
And it was at my wife's beckoning that we moved our family down here for, sort of career purposes and as we proceeded forward.
So it all happened for a reason, kind of.
That's right. That's right.
How many years were you in commercial practice?
So I was in the commercial practice in New York in the large firm for about 2 years. And then I came down to Florida, and my first 8 years in Florida was working in not exactly a corporate type practice, but it was commercial in that I represented franchisees, the guy who owns the local Burger King or the local McDonald's, against the franchisor. Now that was a little bit different than in New York working for large corporations, because usually the franchisee is a guy who just owns a small business and is having a problem with the more powerful franchisor. And that I kind of learned a lot about myself and how I really enjoyed working for kind of the little guy against the big guy, representing people, fighting for their rights against more powerful players. And it was a powerhouse of a firm that I was working for. At the time, actually, it's in this building that we're in right now.
In this building?
Yeah.
This same building?
The building that we're in right now.
Oh, okay.
And but that practice was, took me all over the country. And that, as I was growing my family, I found to be a little bit difficult, and I wanted to be closer to home, continuing to fight for people against the machine, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I transitioned to personal injury almost somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, working again for the little guy up against the insurance companies, and that's where I continue to find myself today.
And in that way, you found the balance of spending time with your family and at the same time, following your purpose of helping the little ones, like you said.
What happened in the franchise world was you could have a franchisee who's your client in Miami, right? So my client would be in Miami, I'd have a great relationship with them. But if the franchisor is in Texas,
You have to
and
travel
there's a
to
problem
Texas.
with the franchisor in Texas, more often than not, the litigation is going to be in Texas. So our practice was really national.
Yeah.
And so I'd have these relationships with these great people who were running amazing businesses that I loved working with. But it just took us all around the country. And as I was having children and building a family, it
Of
was
course.
not exactly where I wanted to be. I really wanted to focus on being at home. And so when dealing with injury cases, a car accident case that happens in Miami is going to have a litigation in Miami.
Sure.
A trip and fall or a slip and fall that happens in Broward County is going to be litigated in Broward County.
Yeah, it stays local, and you're next to your family.
It's local,
Yeah.
and it's the opportunity to represent injured people against large corporations, against monsters of, people who literally make a living withholding money from people.
Yeah.
And kind of forcing their hand and making them give it up, and that I kind of found to be my calling.
And so it was around 15 years ago that you transitioned to PI. Did you got your own practice then, or you start working for a law firm and then you got your own practice?
At the time, I kind of looked around and I looked at a law firm that I thought had a need for a litigator. So it was a practice that was existing. It was a lot of resolution of cases pre-suit, so a lot of negotiating, but without filing lawsuits. Or I saw that when they were filing lawsuits, they were kind of struggling in their efforts in litigation to move cases along. And so I made a proposal to the principal of the firm and suggested that I come along and take over the litigation of their cases.
Okay.
And that's sort of how I cut my teeth, and that's how I developed the experience needed to kind of understand the process from A to Z. But I brought what I thought was value at the time to the firm, and was able to continue doing what I wanted to do and what I love to do, just in a slightly different type of practice, and that was about 15 years ago.
Okay. And now you have your office in North Miami for a few years, and I know you have built your own community around there, and you live around there. So I wanted to ask you how it's been the last few years for you as a personal injury attorney, having your own practice and around North Miami.
So it's a use of a lot of skills, and it's been great. I mean, I love it. I find that servicing clients and making them happy and satisfied has its own rewards, and it has substantial business rewards. And that, being driven by my effort to get good results for clients, to hold insurance companies feet to the fire and hold them responsible for the damages that their insureds cause. I find that to be rewarding every day. I find it to be rewarding when we find a dangerous condition on the street that a client of mine tripped over, and we let somebody know we're about to sue them, and not only do I get the opportunity to get compensation from my client, but I see that the condition is fixed because it was dangerous in its then current condition.
So you're preventing for future
We're
as well.
we're improving the condition on the street or the condition on the property while helping a client get compensation for their injuries. So there's a lot of rewards, a lot of things that help me, that make it easy to get up in the morning, get to work, and be motivated to get people good results.
I can see it in your smiles, and every time I see you, you look happy where you are. So
it's a facade. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. I'm deeply crying beneath this smile here.
No, I don't think so. So besides your PI, experience and everything, and we're gonna talk about a little bit what you enjoy doing outside of work. So you did mention to me that you enjoy traveling. You also enjoy sports. We can talk about that too, but in specific to traveling, what do you have any favorite place or any special memory or story that you traveled to?
I got to, one time, I went on this drive about 3.5 hours away, and I met Mickey Mouse.
What do you mean you met Mickey Mouse? What do you mean you went to Orlando and you met Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, I went to Orlando and I met Mickey Mouse. That was awesome.
I was 4 years old when I did that too. It was awesome too.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I used to be scared though. That was the difference, the tiny difference. When you're 4-year-old, you meet Mickey Mouse, you just cry, and out of happiness.
For me, it was later in life. I got to see my kids cry, but actually, one of my favorite, and I'm sort of just joking about Disney World, but it does have its rewards. One of my favorite trips to Disney World, actually, which I'm not necessarily in love with, but and I've sued them before too, by the way.
You Disney?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Don't tell them, because
Okay,
I may visit one day. And
I won't tell them. I'll make sure I won't tell them.
But my son, we went one time for like around Halloween, and my son must have been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, and he's dressed up like Buzz Lightyear, and he loved Buzz Lightyear, you know, from Toy Story, and there's a Buzz Lightyear ride, and on the line for Buzz Lightyear was Buzz Lightyear. Like, you know, the character was like hanging around, so my son's dressed just like him, and he gets to walk up and meet him, and he was like, you know, I mean, you were scared of Mickey or Minnie, and I'm sorry to hear that, but my son actually connected.
Oh, connected.
Connected with Buzz Lightyear.
It was a good connection.
Which was, right, connect.
He was dressed by him, so I guess he was proud to meet him in person.
It was very cute to see. It was very cute to see.
Well, no, the memory that I have, no, to be honest, it was not Mickey. It was Barney. Was it Barney? I just remember my family. We used to live where you live now. We used to live, you know, by Bay Harbor area.
Right.
And I just remember, I was like 4, that we drove to Orlando. And I was seeing the Disney on Ice. I think it was Barney on Ice. I just remember I started crying and crying and crying. And my dad used to spoil me. So I couldn't stop crying. So he was just like, okay, let's go back to Miami. So I remember we went all in the car, and I believe my brother was there. And I don't know if he was pissed, my mom was pissed, everyone was pissed off, because we just drove for hours, and then the little girl's crying, and my dad's like, okay, poor little girl, let's go back to Miami.
Right.
I just have that, I don't know why it stand out, and I believe I was 4. But I remember me crying on Disney on Ice, and my dad just like, okay, let's go back to Miami.
So I understand that there's a psychologist on this show sometime previously, so I'm not going to charge you for this session.
Oh, you're going to charge me for this session?
Yeah,
Thank you.
But it seems I'm playing a dual role here, but I'm comfortable with that.
Yes, okay. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, anyways. I was a little shy maybe when I was little, but anyways. You have any other interesting story or a country that you love?
I mean, I've had 2 kids that have studied in Israel. We go there at least once a year, typically to visit, to support the country in its effort to maintain its identity and security. And we find it extremely rewarding every time we go. So that's always nice. That's probably the trip that we take the most.
The family trip. That's like the main one.
Yeah, that's sort of the trip we take the most. I think we love going to London and to Paris, Amsterdam. By the way, I don't know if you've ever been to Amsterdam.
I've never been to Amsterdam.
I highly recommend it. It's just
it's
an amazing city that's a little bit different from some of the other cities you might experience. But it's fascinating, and it's a great place to visit. A little bit different. That's my recommendation.
I would put it on my list. This world has so many beautiful places, it's like...
Totally.
Yes, we need to take advantage of that. What will you say is your biggest life lesson?
My biggest life lesson, I think there's 2 of them. One of them is that there's dignity to the truth, and I find that to be the case in my practice a lot, meaning, you can we can either exaggerate or pretend things are a certain way when they're a different way, but a lot of times there's dignity to the truth. There's people have their traumas, people have their great experiences. When you're true about it and you're able to deal with them honestly, there's a significant reward in dealing with things truthfully rather than trying to frame them in a different way. And then I'd say for my practice and personally, what I find is an incredible lesson, and I've had a difficult time expressing this in the past, but I think the best way to say it is to find your voice. Finding your voice is important, I think, in life. Being comfortable with who you are. Different people are going to give you different paths, going to give you different ways to manage different situations, but you got to find who you are and how you're going to handle things. Not everything's easy. Some things are stressful, some things are easy. But if you're comfortable in your own skin and you find your own voice, you'll pretty much find your way through anything.
I love it. Find your own voice and love who you are. Embrace who you are.
for sure.
Sounds very Indiana.
Sounds super Indiana. Yes. Yes, it's something else. I have another podcast and thing called Indiana Inspire, so I'll invite you next time.
Oh, okay, nice. I love that.
He'll be my second or third. Yes. Anyways.
I will bring the whole Indiana football team to join you as
And
well.
that will be, and then we have, what's it called? Official, what are the signs saying? Indiana?
The
Welcome
what?
Indiana.
Oh, welcome University.
Indiana.
It says welcome Indiana. Welcome Indiana University.
Well, we just omit the university. We cut it.
Yeah.
And
Welcome,
we just
welcome
keep
Indiana.
welcome Indiana.
There you go.
Yes. You know, it's funny that at the beginning I didn't like my name when I was younger, and now I love my name. I just feel so unique, and I'm like, yes, I'm Indiana.
Well, you're getting a lot of attention now, so you better love
I
it.
better love it, yes. Well, thank you for sharing all those, interesting aspects about your life and your family and who you are. And
Like to share. People should know. I think there's also one last lesson, by the way.
Yes.
Not that I have all the secrets to life, but a little vulnerability goes a long way. I think also, letting people kind of see something real can mean a lot.
People connect in a deeper level when they see that in someone else. Otherwise, it would just be facts. It's
Totally.
there's the human side. We always need that. So now we're going to dive into some interesting cases that you want to share with us. The first one is about car accident, right? It's about a waiver challenge.
Yeah. So.
If you want to share a little bit about this.
Sure. Yeah, I shared with you, I think, previously about this case in preparation for our meeting today, and I find it fascinating because it deals with what we call coverage. It's uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, which not everybody knows about, but it can be pretty important. And so the value in uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, especially in a state like Florida, is that not everybody has insurance in Florida. And so if the person that causes you injury doesn't have insurance, your own insurance can step in and cover what the other person should have covered, right? And so that's called underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. So that's, if somebody hits you, they make you go through a surgery that costs $50,000, but they have $10,000 in coverage. If you have your own your own underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, then your own insurance can make up the difference that you could go ahead and get the treatment you need, even though the person that hit you and caused you injury didn't have their own insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Does that
rings a bell.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So one of my favorite cases was on behalf of a client of mine. She's a super sweetheart of a lady, probably early 40s at the time. She kind of had she had been in some pain prior even to the impact that we're here to discuss. Mm-hmm. But in this particular occasion, she was stopped at a light, rear-ended by an older gentleman, and pushed into the car in front of her. So she suffered really two impacts. The person in front of her was not at all at fault. It was really just the guy behind her. Mm-hmm. And the guy behind her had $50,000 in insurance coverage, but she suffered really what was a debilitating injury, something that caused her serious pain over the course of time. She didn't necessarily undergo surgery or significantly invasive treatment because she's more of a wellness, diehard wellness kind of person who
Natural.
What's that? Looking for, she would do like yoga and Pilates and this kind of thing to try to just strengthen her spine. She did, I think, actually undergo some kind of epidural steroid injections, but was not prepared to undergo a surgery. But she lived, suffering through the pain. Anyway, the thing that was fascinating about her case is that she and her husband had an insurance policy. It's called your bodily injury insurance policy, which is in case you cause somebody else harm, you have protection in case they sue you. And in her case, she had 200, 400. Now, when you have 200, 400, what that means is you have 200 for every person that's a victim of an accident, and 400 for every accident. So each person gets 200, but if you have 5 people in the car, all 5 are capped at 400. One person could get as much as 200, but the 5 together are capped at 400. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So anyway, this lady gets rear-ended, hit by a guy, pushed into the car in front of her. She's got 200, 400. He's got 50. We get his 50, but she's still suffering horribly. Anyway, when you buy your 200, 400 insurance, when you buy your bodily injury insurance, you have the opportunity to be educated on UM. The insurance company is supposed to tell you about it. And you get UM unless you opt out. Now, people opt out because they want to lower their rates. And each person individually has to make their decision about what they can afford and what they can't. I would recommend that you get uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage if you can. If you could afford it, you should, because it's very strong protection.
It's worth it.
It's strong protection against things that could go wrong that are beyond your control. And what's beyond your control is that if somebody hits you, what that person has in insurance is beyond your control.
Yeah.
What you have in your own insurance is within your control. And so you have the ability to control that. And so, getting the uninsured motorist coverage is important. Anyway, the insurance company is obligated to educate you on the uninsured motorist coverage. And if you choose not to take it, you sign off on a waiver. You waive your right to uninsured motorist coverage. Your rate comes down some, but you lose this opportunity. But it needs to be what's called an educated waiver, meaning the insurance company has to demonstrate that they told you about it, that you understood, and that you signed off on it. Well, what we were able to demonstrate in this particular case was that our client, when they purportedly signed off on they did it on a computer screen. They did it electronically, and what happened was the signature page came up first. They signed off on the waiver, and then they were presented with the education about what they were signing off on. So they signed before they actually knew what they were signing off on, right? So they signed off on 200, 400 bodily injury insurance, and if you get if you get uninsured motorist coverage, it matches your bodily injury coverage.
Got it.
And then it's multiplied by the number of cars you have.
Okay.
So what happened was we got the signed waiver tossed because it wasn't an educated waiver. The signature page came up before the education. So the signature page was tossed. So all of a sudden, they opt in. They've got 200, 400, but they have 5 cars. So their 200, 400 was multiplied by 5. So literally overnight, they went from $0 in uninsured motorist coverage to $1 million in coverage. So my client, who got rear-ended, took the $50,000 from this guy who rear-ended her, got pushed into the car in front of her. She continues to suffer from a terrible back injury. And literally overnight, she goes from having $0 in insurance coverage to having $1 million because the waiver was deemed void. And so she got the uninsured motorist coverage. And I love the story because number one, it's an education on uninsured motorist coverage and the possibilities there. Number two, so people should know that it's available to them, and they should know that if they can afford it, they should take it, right? Number two, on behalf of my client, I got an unbelievable result on behalf of a client that I think really, I can't say that other lawyers would overlook it. I don't know if they would or wouldn't. I know that I found it, and it makes me very proud of the fact that I was able to literally find coverage for my client.
I was going to ask you, how did you found out exactly that they signed first and then the instructions were
so there had been an investigation done, so we were able to match the form that they signed on, and there had previously been a determination that form was void because of the way it was presented.
Okay.
So this had been litigated to a resolution. There's no way for lawyers necessarily to come across this information unless they research it.
Okay.
But you always have to make sure that the signed uninsured motorist form was done appropriately.
Did she had a copy of it?
What's that?
Did she had a copy?
She gets a copy. We get a copy of her signature on the paper.
Okay.
And we get the opportunity to see the paper. It comes with like I want to say it's not a CPR code. What's it called? Those codes that are like when you scan something.
A QR code?
What's that?
QR
A QR code.
code?
Yes.
Okay.
It has like its own code at the bottom of the form, and we were able to determine that form had been deemed void based on the procedure and the process that it had undergone upon signature.
So it means that probably a lot of people were getting this, right?
Those who know.
Those who, yes, but we're getting the signature first and then the explanation.
There was probably, for example, there was a period of time that this was the way that this insurance company presented it to their clients, and they're all void.
Oh, okay.
Based on the fact that they were presented this way.
Got it.
But knowing to do your due diligence, doing the due diligence, getting the result that we got, it just doesn't happen for everybody. And so, we try to stay educated on these issues. And like I said, being in a position, I think it's rare. I'd be surprised if there was anybody else who literally overnight found $1 million in coverage for the client.
Yeah, that's not. It sounds like what's it called? Like the lottery.
It's like
it's like the lottery. It's like you have this, and then all of a sudden you have
literally like hitting the lottery. And so our client's recovery went from a $50,000 recovery to what ultimately was something like a $400,000 recovery for her case altogether. Now, you might ask, I can imagine, and I've had clients ask me this, how come you have $1 million in insurance and you get a $400,000 result? Just because there's $1 million in insurance doesn't mean it's
that you'll get
$1
everything.
million case, right?
Yes.
But it gives you the opportunity to collect up to that $1 million. And my client's case was very serious, but ultimately it was determined by all the parties to not be quite $1 million case, but a $400,000 case. And it can literally be life-changing.
Do you know of a lot of your clients that are not well informed about and they just sign the waiver, or maybe they don't even read the instructions? Is it that common to happen?
So the answer is an absolute yes, right? So the clients are, is it possible that a client doesn't necessarily know what they're signing? It's possible. That being said, in Florida, the law says that if you sign on something, you're presumed to know what it says, right? There's a presumption that you understand what you're signing, and insurance companies will be very careful to make sure that what you're signing says what they want it to say. In our case, they slipped up. The insurance company slipped up, and we caught them on it. So when they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's. In our case. They let one slide. And so, unfortunately, more often than not, the case, it may be that a client doesn't necessarily perceive the knowledge. They don't quite understand what the insurance company is trying to explain to them.
Yes, and they just sign.
But by the time they sign on the dotted line, that piece of paper says enough that the insurance company is protected.
Got it.
In our case, not so much.
Got it. Yeah.
And so when I say that sometimes, it's rewarding to wake up in the morning holding the insurance company's feet to the fire, that means that they need to demonstrate that they're entitled to any rights that they're asserting. They better be right. Otherwise, if we catch them, we make them pay, and we enjoy making them pay.
You enjoy making them pay. You enjoy making them pay. Let's make that clear. Well, what would you say was the biggest legal challenge or the aha moment in this case? Like, what made you overnight saying, wait, let me look into this? Like, do you remember what was like that aha moment?
So the big issue is that some of the most difficult and frustrating cases, frankly, that we have, and I think this probably goes for every lawyer everywhere, is that when a client suffers an injury, if the insurance doesn't match up, it's very difficult to get an appropriate recovery for the client. So, for example, we've had cases where people have fractured legs, but the person who caused the fracture has a $10,000 policy, and it just doesn't cover it, unfortunately. Now, are there alternatives that you could do? There's alternatives you could do in the right case, but sometimes you're just stuck. You can't draw blood from a stone, right? So if somebody's got a $10,000 policy, it probably means that they're not protecting too many assets. Somebody who's got a lot is going to make sure they have the insurance to protect what they have. Someone who's got a $10,000 policy might be doing it just because the state requires it, but not because there's really no other way to collect that money. So when I find myself in a situation where I have a client that I know is hurt, and I know that the insurance on the other side is limited, we make the effort to do our due diligence to find insurance everywhere we could possibly find it. And insurance is one obvious avenue in virtually every case. the UM is an obvious avenue in virtually every case. And so it's one of the first things we check. And so when we check, we insist that we get the signed waiver. We insist that we get the signed waiver, and then we insist on doing due diligence to determine how the signed waiver was secured, and that there's never been a problem with it determined previously by a court, and all these things. And so, so in this case, the aha moment was doing the due diligence to see that this waiver happened to be deemed void, and then it just so happened that the client had $200,000 in coverage times 5.
Times 5 cars.
Worked out.
It just happened.
Worked out very well for them.
Yeah.
For them and for us, frankly.
So at the end is the due diligence of really looking into each specific case, everything.
We didn't plan on this, but I'm going to tell you one other circumstance that happened, because it also deals with UM.
Okay.
And it occurred to me as a fascinating case, and I'll try to make this one a little shorter.
Okay.
But in one case, a client of mine was hurt very badly, and the other side had $100,000, but $100,000 wasn't going to cover it.
Wasn't going to cover it.
Wasn't going to cover it. Anyway, they had $10,000 in uninsured motorist coverage. I'm sorry, no, they had $10,000 in bodily injury coverage. $10,000 in bodily injury coverage. They were told by the insurance company that they had no uninsured motorist coverage. Anyway, my client was in the hospital, and while he was in the hospital, his insurance agent was going to his wife, asking her to sign off on the waiver that she was supposed to sign 2 years prior.
No way.
So they were trying to chase down the waiver while he was getting treatment in the hospital, because
Wow.
they had never
signed it.
They had never signed the waiver, and so ultimately it was a $10,000 policy. We were able to generate a lot of interest and problems for the insurance company, but this is sort of sometimes the games they play, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And this is why, like I said, you can wake up in the morning knowing that you're holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah, I wouldn't. What kind of person would be? The guy's in the hospital. Let me just go to his wife and make sure he signs whatever. Like, I don't care. It was shocking.
It was shocking. It was shocking in a sense. In that case, insurance companies often are entitled to notice of a problem. And they're entitled oftentimes to 60 days to fix that problem. Because they got 60 days, they were able to kind of fix the problem. That's not to say they were able to secure the waiver. What they were able to do was pay the money that they owed in a short period of time. Had they not paid that, it would have been a lot worse for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had situations where people have actually tracked down waivers, or made the effort to track down waivers that were supposed to be signed that weren't. So that you can imagine, when you say something's an educated waiver, and they can't even find the document, it could create a very serious problem for the insurance company, and we've been successful doing that as well.
Well, congratulations on that. No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And another case you have, right, that is not on UM and is not actually a car accident. This one is a little different. It's about a code violation and something that you would explain right now. But if you can describe the second case, because when you shared it with me, that it was also very interesting, and it has some very details, same as this one, but even more meticulous, that you have to go back and then read, and then anyways, you have to go back many years. So can you share about this second case?
Sure. So this was one of my favorite cases ever, and it was unfortunate, and the reason it's a favorite of mine is because it's so unfortunate, but because we were able to get such a good result for the client. The client actually ended up, it was a I want to say 9-year-old boy and his 3-year-old sister who were left behind when their father died as a result of an electrocution. And so what happened in this case was the father was a day laborer. He was going to the rooftop of a building where he was being paid something like literally $25 for the day to do some work on this roof, to clean off the roof. And as he was walking up there, he was walking up with what we call an aluminum flashing. It was a long piece of aluminum, and he's going up some steps to the roof, and as he's walking up, his aluminum flashing touches an overhead electrical wire, and he is immediately electrocuted and dies on the spot. Very sad story. Very sad occurrence. Anyway, what happens is there are codes, and the codes tend to become stricter over time. And there's codes that deal with how close overhead electrical lines are allowed to be to the buildings that they're running parallel to, or across. Anyway, in fascinating fashion, the electrical line that was near this roof was compliant with codes going back to the early 70s, but in the late 70s, it was no longer compliant with the code.
Got it.
And I recall walking into a room, and there were a lot of defendants in this case. It was a room with a large conference table running all the way down. I'm the one guy representing my client, which is, the way these things work. But there's a lawyer for the building. There's a lawyer for the people who manage the overhead line. There's a lawyer for the,
it's a big case.
for the renter, the owner, the guy who hired the guy to go up to the roof to clear off the thing. And and ultimately, we had a problem because our belief was that there was a code violation because of the distance between this overhead line and the building. And as we made that allegation, the attorney for the company that was then responsible for that situation said, Brian, we appreciate your pitch, but you're applying the wrong code. And, when the building and the line were originally put in, it was compliant with the code at that time. The codes become stricter over time, but it gets grandfathered to the
70s, pretty much. It was
What's
saying
that?
it was to the 70s, or what year? What
It
were
was
they
like,
saying?
I think they were arguing the code of 1974, something like that. And what happened was, in 1980, the code changed. So the line was far enough if applying the 1974 code, but it wasn't far enough if you're applying the 1980 code. And so what happened was, the electrical line, if you look at the electrical map, the electrical line was put in the early 70s, before 1974, as was the original building. The original building was like a little farmhouse in Hialeah.
Okay.
And then there was this
Construction.
there was this industrial revolution in Hialeah where farmland was transformed into industrial commercial properties. And so what we had to do was we had to use the historical data and go back and reconstruct Hialeah basically and show that while there was an electrical line there that predated 1974, that line came down. It was replaced by a higher power line, and the building that was there, the little farmhouse that was there, also came down, and there was a new building that went up. And just after 1980, 1981 or 1982, I think it was, by the time the new building came up and the new line went in, it was too close under the 1980 code. And so we walked out, in a disagreement between me and the attorney as to which code would be applied. At that point, I basically had to rebuild Hialeah, historically. And we were able to demonstrate to a judge that the line had come down. It had been replaced. It was the same, it was running the same avenue. It looked like it was in the same place, but it was a line that was intended to feed a farmhouse, and it was replaced by a line intended to feed an industrial warehouse, right? And then the warehouse came up next to it, and so it ended up being too close under the 1980 code. The judge ruled in our favor that we were in fact right, that the code, from the 80s applied. We were able to demonstrate that it was too close to the building, and based on that single ruling, we were able to bring about $1 million in value to the case based on that ruling alone, and resolve based on the judge's agreement with us that when the line was upgraded to a new line and the building went from a farmhouse to a commercial building through the historical, reconstruction of this area, for this 3-year-old girl and her 9-year-old brother, we were able to bring in another $1 million of value to the case, so that they could, so that they had the capability to replace the number one, the economic, the funding that their father would have brought as a full-time worker, the guidance that the father, you can never replace the guidance of a father. But
Yeah.
all we could do as lawyers is secure financial security to do the best we can to replace what was lost. And so it was an incredible result. And frankly, oddly, I think the lawyer on the other side actually believed what he was saying.
The one representing the...
He was representing the defendant.
Okay.
It's confidential, so I'm not allowed to disclose the defendant.
No worries.
And I think he believed in his position, and then I think when the judge ruled against him, they became very concerned that their perception of how things are supposed to be could change substantially if they tried to challenge it, because I don't think the courts would have allowed them to get away with it. He was very much under the belief
that he was right.
That it was grandfathered. He was under the belief that because there was previously an electrical line there, that line could stay right where it was. It didn't matter where the building went up, and that line is grandfathered in. Our position was once the line was upgraded to a stronger line, and now there's a new building in place, it needs to be compliant with the new code.
Well, it makes sense. If there's a bigger building, and it totally makes sense. Were you able to, was it in that same court day that you were able to prove that they were wrong, or was it like different?
So we had the trial court judge on our side. The next step would have been, if the defendant challenged that, we would have gone up to an appellate court, and then if the appellate court ruled, it would have governed all. It could have either kept the law in place, or it could have changed the law, but it would give guidance to all trial courts. I think the defendant in this case preferred to pay to make my client go away rather than to face that potential change in the law, or this potential bad law for their client. Obviously for my clients, it was worth $1 million. For their client, if they got a bad ruling from an appellate court, it could have trickled down to all the trial courts and made life much more difficult for them in all their cases. So it really worked out very well for my clients.
Yeah, no. It is crazy. Like, how if it was a farm and they build a bigger building, it's not even, doesn't make sense, right?
Right. But they could get away with it. A lot of times they get away with it because you're talking 30 years ago. And
yes.
So establishing that timeline was not easy. Going back and finding the
How long did it took you?
What's that?
I was going to ask you, how long did it took you to rebuild Hialeah?
All right, it's a fascinating story. Fascinating story within the story. We've got this electrical grid, and there's it's literally like a map. And there's a line, I think it was like a 1T line, and then it was upgraded to like a 2T line, right? Well, I'm taking the deposition of an employee of this company, and they're looking at the electrical map, and I think that employee realized that if it said 2T on their map, they were gonna have a problem. So they're sitting there in the deposition, I'm asking them a question, and I'm asking them to read what it says next to that line. And they say, I can't read it.
I can't read it.
I can't read it. So they were clever, and by the way, it was not easy to read.
Oh, okay.
It was not easy to read.
Okay.
It was, these things are large, and it's old, and it was a reproduction of a document that was created like in the early 80s. It was not easy to read. And so I had to take a break in the deposition, and I had to figure out a way that I was going to get the testimony I needed. So I took a break. I asked for a break. And during the break, I realized on my iPhone, there's a camera. And I could focus the camera on the location, and I was able to blow it up on my camera. And so I was able to make it large enough so it was clear enough. So it was clear enough so that the deponent couldn't say that they couldn't read what it said. They had to admit that it was a 2T. And once they admitted that it was a 2T, I was able to take them down a whole line of questioning about the fact that it was a change. It was a substantial change. It was a change to power, that went from powering a farmhouse to an industrial complex, and all these kind of things. But you face these practical problems sometimes in the practice, and you have to figure out solutions. I was fortunate enough to be able to think on my feet there. It doesn't always work out so smoothly, but this one really was a great result.
You have to be a great problem solver, and look at the mini details, like how that mini detail that maybe doesn't mean anything actually can change entirely a case.
And I'll tell you, this is a kid, the 9-year-old. He was a baseball fan. He grew up outside of Marlin Stadium, in Little Havana, and he was a baseball fan but couldn't get into games because they couldn't afford it for a long time. Anyway, we ended up getting $1 million result, and his mother, the first thing she came to me to tell me was that all those years spent outside the stadium, he was finally able to get into the stadium. And it was such a, it was such a life-changing event for him.
Yeah.
Again, you're never going to replace a father, but there's certain things you can do to just allow the child to go on and have an otherwise normal life. With some compensation for what's a truly substantial loss. But the point of that story is that the great benefit of this result really was hearing back from these children whose lives were changed for the better, despite the fact that they lost their father. Their lives were changed financially for the better. They were able to sustain in an otherwise extraordinarily difficult situation. Obviously, tragic loss of the father is an overriding theme, but knowing that we were able to help the family was significant as well.
Yeah, definitely. This one, it stand out when you said that the father was only making $25 a day. How does that factor into the broader picture of workplace safety and legal responsibility? What can you say about this? What year was this, by the way?
What year did this occur?
Yes.
This was probably 7 or 8 years ago.
I mean, $25 a day.
$25 a day, right? It's so. There are a lot of issues there, right? So, I have had at times we've at times had portions of our practice dedicated to wage and hour matters, making sure that businesses are paying their employees appropriate wages, both from the perspective of meaning minimum wage, and from the perspective of ensuring that they're paying overtime when appropriate and when necessary. Here, unfortunately, we're in Miami. I've seen more than I'd like. People stuck in difficult financial situations where they're generally self-employed. There's really no employer to go after. They're what you would call an independent contractor. And sometimes they just kind of, if they're an unskilled worker, they get taken advantage of, and clearly that was the case here.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and I think you're inspiring me as we speak to perhaps find a solution, or at least a way to make an impact that helps assist people who find themselves in these situations. We'll take it up in the next episode. We'll take
episode with CONNEQT.
Take up solutions to that problem in the next episode. But
problem.
that's a very difficult situation to resolve entirely, but we certainly can make a difference.
Yeah, you can put that in your, what's it called? Your to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely.
For 2026. We're in January, so
it's
we have
there.
Your, what's that called? The dream board for 2026? Dream goals? I have no idea. The vision board. There we go. You dream about it, vision board. There we go. Do you get a lot of cases where people passed away, like in the accidents, or have you had a lot of experience in that?
Yes.
That's
wrongful death is what we call it. It's a substantial part of the practice. Yep. It's unfortunate, and again, we do anything and everything we can to hold people accountable. Literally just resolved a case of a drunk driver causing a death of another driver. Again, as we discussed, sometimes the cases are not so straightforward. And so the drunk driver herself is facing substantial criminal charges and has limited coverage, not the kind of insurance coverage that can take care of the 2 young children left behind by this deceased gentleman. In this particular case, the lady who caused the death was coming from a bar where she was a regular. We were able to get some testimony from the bar about how often she was there and how much she drank. She didn't seem to be a problem customer, meaning she didn't regularly walk out of there overtly wasted. But the law typically, it generally protects bars from cases against the bar, because bars are serving
Everyone.
They're serving everyone, and they can't be they can't be a police officer for every single person they serve to make sure that they're not going out and causing trouble. That being said, what the law does provide for, first of all, if it's an underage person, so if a bar serves somebody underage who then goes out and causes injury because they were served in a bar, that's a big problem for a bar. In our particular case, we were able to argue that if the bar knows that when the bar knows that a person is a habitual drinker or a habitual drunkard, is I believe how the statute reads, then the bar's got a problem, because if the bar's got a license, and part of, there's some form of responsibility that comes with that license, and so if they're serving a habitual drunkard, then they've got a problem. Now, the cases become extremely bad for bars if a family member goes to the bar and says, "Look, you're serving my brother often. He is an alcoholic and is having difficulty managing their alcoholism. I'd prefer if you don't serve them." Or somebody is regularly creating problems on premises and they continue to serve them. This case sort of fell in between. This was like a situation where the lady was a regular drinker. I think she had the kind of drinks that I think you would expect somebody to have when they go to the bar, but she was doing it perhaps more often than I think the average person might find acceptable. And so it fell into a range where we were able to get a good result for a client and for the two children left behind, as well as the wife that was left behind. But not quite. It was, but we had to find a settlement range that appropriately accounted for the fact that a jury might find that she wasn't a habitual drunkard. So we had enough to go with to say she's a regular drinker who's probably drinking a little too much regularly, but she's not necessarily overtly irresponsible. Although it seems she was on this night. The issues were complicated by the fact that she had somebody in the car with her. That person, may have been distracting her, which would take, the spotlight off the bar. There are other things that were going on here that we had to deal with. But yes, in terms of the original question, wrongful death, there's certainly cases that we handle. They're very serious cases, and they often require some significant creativity because of the nature of the injury.
Well, you have that creativity. You go to the scene, you investigate every single point and every aspect of it, so you definitely have that creativity in you. What I do, I handle my clients' cases personally, and I get personally involved. I see that, the way you express.
Yes. And so, I take pride in the fact that we take extra steps to ensure.
You go all in.
You're
all in.
Absolutely.
Yes, you go. Brian goes all in. That should be your slogan.
What's that?
All in? What's it called? What could it be? But Brian goes all in.
Brian goes all in. I'm going to buy
something like that.
We'll buy the phone number 888 all in.
888 all in. Oh.
We'll have to get that. We'll talk about that.
Brian, write it. 2026 vision board. Huh?
That also sounds like gambling.
Maybe.
888 all in.
But what did you say? It sounds like gambling?
Gambling.
Okay, so it's funny you say that, because I do actually own the phone number 888 high roller.
No.
That's
oh yeah, is your last name?
High roller.
I love that.
So
yeah. Well, all of your cases are so interesting, Brian. Like, I love how you share a lot of the details, that happen in each case, and they're not regular cases, the ones that you're sharing. Each one there's something to learn about it, and I know you have another one, right? They want to share?
Yeah. Well, let's back up for 1 second,
Yes,
just so that we're clear. Every case is interesting in a certain way, because every case is a different client, and each client's unique, and so even a rear end collision that's literally just one car running into the other, it's gonna have it'll impact different people differently, and so each case is unique in that sense. These cases are unique in terms of the investigation.
Yes.
In terms of some of the methods that we use to get results, so we're proud of that as well. I'm proud of both, being able to manage, unique people and clients, and also unique sets of facts that get us to better results. So you mentioned there was one other, right? So,
Yes.
And I think you were taking me down a path before where you said that we do our own investigation. And so, one last case that I told you about, I think that I took a lot of pride in, where it was a case where a client of mine got beat up pretty badly by some bouncers at a club. And it was done on the street. It was done outside the red rope, because my client and his brother and their family members, he actually even had his mother with him on his birthday. They were unable to get into a particular bar in town. And it ended up in a brawl in the middle of the street. And so I made the decision to go to the location of the incident personally so I could get a feel for the area. And it just so happened in my visit to the location that I was able to spot a camera managed by the city. So it's in the Wynwood area. It has some potential crime issues. The city put some cameras in, and the cameras are super high resolution. They're incredible in their technology, where you can focus on different aspects of the screen, different areas of the screen. You can really enhance them. Anyway, sometimes if you don't act fast, if nobody requests it, the video just tapes over. 30 days out, 60 days out, they just reuse the data. They don't save everything forever. So you got to ask them to save it. So when I went out to the scene, I saw this camera. I was hopeful that we'd find something and find something good in the video recording, and we were able to request that the video recording be retained. The police kept it, they delivered it to us, and we were able to see that our client essentially at some point was gone. He had called it a night, but that the bouncers escalated a dispute. They, instead of diffusing a situation, instead of bringing the temperature down, the bouncers trailed my client and the group he was with out into the middle of the street. The brawl started in the middle of the street, and because it was our position was a couplefold, but one of the things is that bouncers, they're supposed to protect people, property, locations. They had no need to protect anything in the middle of the street. They weren't protecting anything. At that point they became aggressors. And we were able to see that clearly on camera. And if you don't have the camera and you don't have the tape, it's difficult to reconstruct. Everybody's got a different story. But I felt very fortunate, frankly, that I went out to the location immediately upon hearing about the case, getting an understanding as to what our client's perspective was, and being able to immediately tell the police, don't destroy this video. We need it. It's going to give us the answers to our case. And my client, very unfortunately, although it ended up being really a great story, but our client suffered a horrible fracture of the orbital bone, basically his cheek. He got punched in the face. It literally crumbled. The good news is the night of the incident, a plastic surgeon and an orthopedic surgeon were able to literally
Join
put his
forces.
face back together. They did amazing work in the city of Miami. I believe he went to Jackson Memorial. And they were able to reconstruct his face, and he's a young man who was out with his girlfriend.
And one surgery only?
It
Or
was,
they were multiple?
yes, what happened, they actually, oddly enough, to fix the cheek, they went in through his mouth. And they were able to get to the cheek through the mouth, so they didn't even have to make a scar.
Oh,
The scar
through the mouth.
was inside his mouth. And they went into his cheek, and they put a plate in there that perfectly resembled his
Wow.
cheek, and they were able to put screws in the plate, and everything reformed. And my client, over time, really had an excellent recovery. I mean, he's a young man, a good-looking young man. He's a kid who grew up in Venezuela. He was playing on soccer teams in Italy. He was so
wow.
good. He'd been recruited to Italy to play soccer.
Wow.
He ultimately came to Miami. He was making a living for himself. A good-looking kid, a sweet kid, who ended up, if you saw the pictures of him immediately following the fight, you'd be concerned that he would never be restored to normalcy. And then you see him 2 years later, and you'd almost never know what
That
he went
he
through.
went through that.
And so very fortunate, really, really fortunate case. A lot of trauma, obviously substantial pain and suffering along the way. He's now living with a big plate in his face. It happened to be on his birthday, so every time he has a birthday,
He
that comes
remembers
with
that.
a trauma.
Yeah.
And so we got him a great recovery, but a lot of that stemmed from the fact that we went directly to the scene, scoped out the scene personally, and were able to identify a camera that gave us what I think was the goal that we needed to kind of put everything together
Yeah.
to get them
Go-
the recovery that
That
he
it
was
goes back
entitled
to your slogan.
What's that?
Brian goes all in. Goes back to every single case. Goes back to your slogan. That's gonna be your slogan, at least for me.
You
I'm
got
gonna
it.
have that in mind.
You can have it. You can have it, and if it works for you, it'll work for me.
It
Ultimately,
works for
I
you,
guess. So I'll take
correct.
it.
Yes. Now, one of the last topics in Connect that we're gonna discuss today is about this case that's been going around in the last few days, well, more than a week now, which is the Minneapolis ICE shooting situation.
Right.
I've saw the videos, I read about it, and it's so disturbing. It's like, for me, it doesn't make sense what happened, like how this lady was shot and killed. For me, this was something that wouldn't have happened at all. So to give a little description of what happened, right? So a woman who was not the target of an immigration arrest was fatally shot during a federal enforcement operation. And the video footage has left many people confused about how and why the situation escalated. This incident has triggered protests, political backlash, and a national debate over federal law and enforcement tactics. So, we talked about it a little bit, but if you would like to maybe walk us through what happened, and then I'll we'll discuss a few questions about it.
Sure. I obviously, there's probably more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously, going to be facts that come out over time. Not to take the lady to task for a moment, but I will for just a moment. Cars are potentially dangerous weapons, and
Okay.
and from what I understand, even before she was approached by ICE, kind of more on a more personal level, she used her car to kind of block off the road. And so, just in speaking to the viewers now, and to speaking to people and delivering one message on this issue, the one message would be, cars as a general matter can be very dangerous. They can be used in dangerous ways, dangerous instrumentalities, if you will. And they should be used for their intended purpose, meaning to get you from point A to point B, right? So we want to use our cars in a way that's safe for the person, for society. And so this lady was using her car in an effort, frankly, to block ICE, which is, understandable. There's a lot of tension. We're in Miami. We understand that immigration contributes very positively to our society. There are negative consequences to immigration as well. I think in Miami we've been probably very strong positive beneficiaries of immigration over the course of decades. And so, there's a notion here of what immigration can bring to a community. And this lady clearly felt that way. I mean, she must have had a very positive view of immigration as a general matter and wanted to protect immigrants from ICE, and used her car in a way that was not consistent with its intended purpose. It was not getting her from point A to point B. It was, being used to block the road. But she was doing it with seemingly the best of intentions, right? ICE responded. They obviously, if you want to call it, they've got a job to do. They didn't appreciate her getting in the way. Temperatures and tempers rose. Police officers also walk around with very dangerous instrumentalities. They carry weapons with them. They carry guns, and so you had this conflict at a point where the police were using their dangerous instrumentality, their gun, to accomplish what I guess they saw fit within their, within the framework of what they believe their job to be. And this lady who was using her car to block the road, then again used her car in an effort to get away from these armed police officers. And it's just a tragic situation all around. Unfortunately, as we've discussed today, I've seen tragedy in my cases, and it happens. And sometimes it's very difficult to manage because someone's at fault, no one's at fault, or there are two stories that are in conflict with one another, and it needs to be sometimes submitted to a jury to decide, because that's how our system operates, right?
Yeah.
When there's a conflict, and there's what we call a dispute of facts, when one side's operating under a set of facts, another side's operating, under a different set of facts, or it may even be the same set of facts, but it may be different people's perceptions. We submit it to a jury because, as a society, we put together a group of people that represent our society, and we try to determine as a society who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw, the last part of the video that she's like driving and then she's like backing up a little bit, and then there she was just shot, right? One would argue, well, if you think she's gonna cause danger or something, you could shot the tire, or you could shot, you know what I mean, like prevent for her to keep moving or whatever you think. But maybe the human part of, like you said, everything got, you felt threatened, or I don't know, and then you just acted out of impulse.
I mean, you could imagine, I heard yesterday for the first time that I believe the officer had been exposed previously to somebody trying to hit him with their car, right?
Oh, no way, really?
And you could imagine, by the way, and I don't know this to be true one way or another, but you could imagine that the lady behind the wheel could have had a prior bad experience with police officers that she didn't want to, that she was traumatized by, and that impacted her. And so, ultimately, my message from this is that as a community and as a country, we can easily be polarized by our two, very polarizing perspectives over who acted wrong here and who acted right. I think as a society, we need to realize that, number one, on some level, we want to keep the temperature down as much as we can. Because when the temperature comes up, things happen in the heat of the moment that will be regretted. There's no doubt in my mind that virtually every actor here regrets their actions, and certainly regrets the consequences. It shouldn't end up this way, whether the police officer felt, in danger for his life, or whether, and clearly she ends up, in the position she's in, where she was killed in connection with this action. There has to be regret all around. I mean, because everybody's life is impacted, and nobody's life is impacted positively from this, from this incident. My concern, as a general matter, is that as a society, we're being fed so much information that we're polarizing, and we're not necessarily listening to the other side, or we're being empathetic to the other side. There are times where we've got to take a stand, and we've got to be guided by what we think is right and what we think is wrong. I hope in this situation, obviously, a situation of regret, but we've got a system in place that deals with it as best as we can as a society. I hope the system doesn't fail us here, but it's it's difficult to see the country taking such strong positions on either side that we're growing apart from one another, when at the end of the day we have a system that needs to resolve these differences for us. And because hopefully that makes us stronger moving forward. If we get too polarized, it's going to hurt us as a society. And so we sort of have to, on some level, hear each other out. And the last thing I want to say about that, going back to a point that I made much earlier, is that there's some dignity to the truth. Meaning, on some level, we've got to face those facts that are bad for us, and we've got to face those facts that are good. We've got to use those facts that are good for us, but we also have to deal with those facts that are bad for us. Nobody wants this lady to die. Nobody wants her to be killed at the scene. There's no justification for it, but when temperatures rise and when people find themselves in the heat of a certain situation, things happen that can be bad, and so we have to, as a society, manage those situations as best as we can and not make them worse, by piling on here.
It's crazy how each person has its own little world, right? Like what happened beforehand. Like you said about post-traumas, that he had an incident. I don't know if it was the same incident, but he had an incident in June that it was related to maybe now he has post-trauma. So it's very complex.
Well, what's the incident that you heard about in June?
The one in June, that he was, someone attempted to kill him or something.
Somebody attempted to kill him. Right.
So I don't know if there's anything really, what I'm saying is that you see this and then you have no idea what's, I mean, this is a complex case, but I'm talking more of a day-to-day case.
Yeah.
You're driving and then this person is rushing and then you're like, oh my God, this person is just, but you don't know why is that person like there's always something there's a story behind being more understandable, but I mean,
and by the way, even and just to kind of wrap this up a little bit, even in what we call the simplest case, I'll have a client who's hurt and I'll have an insurance company that's prepared to pay. Well, the insurance company that's prepared to pay is not living with my client. Mm-hmm. So they don't necessarily know what my client's going through day to day, all day, every day. And my client could be severely impacted, even though it's not overtly, obvious to the insurance company. And so there are disputes. So it could be, that the insurance company, and this happens to me literally every day, in the most typical of cases, an insurance company thinks a case is worth $50,000. I think the case is worth $500,000, right? And so, the system forces us either to work it out, or at the end of the day, we take it to a jury and a jury will decide, right? And so on some level, we need to have faith in the system. And I hope that as a society and as a country, we perhaps redevelop faith in the system. It can be a good system when it's not perverted, when people are not taking advantage of the system. And when the system's being used appropriately, it's probably the best system around. It's our jury system.
Yeah.
It's a great system. It's a jury of our peers. It's a great system.
That would be the ideal.
What's that?
The ideal that each person is thinking of the good of the society and not only on the benefit as my own benefit. You mean?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have
Well,
a question. Hold on.
Okay,
Before you
she
move
has a
on.
question. Okay.
A lot of attorneys right now, they'll pick up the phone, they'll listen to someone, and they'll be like, "I don't want to take that case." That that might have been the case with the guy who got beat up because they only tend to hear one side of the story. And they're like, "Well, sounds like you pissed off some bouncers. I don't want to take the case." How did you learn to become you sound very you take a step back. It sounds like you know how to take a step back and go, "Well, hold on. There might be something else here." Or as Indiana says, you go all in, right? How did you learn to become like that? Become more analytical, understanding? Is it through personal experiences? Is it through work, or is it both?
That's a great question.
So that's
It's a great question.
It might be a
It's a
layered
deep question.
it's fairly complimentary, so
question.
I appreciate that. I think frankly, I think my varied background helps. We talked a little bit about the fact that I used to work for corporations and I did some work for franchisees. So I've learned to analyze information in a variety of different ways. And I also, consistent with that, have developed this sense that I always want to fight for the person who doesn't have the capabilities, number one, of fighting for themselves, and number two, seems to be up against a machine or up against, this corporation, this larger, more powerful player. I will say this: when the injuries are substantial, most lawyers will take an additional look at it. There's obviously there's great value in substantial injuries for us when we can find a tortfeasor, is what you would call it. A person who caused the problem, a person who's liable for the damages. And you've got to get the insurance to line up. So there is incentive. There's incentive that we have. But because of the way I operate my firm, I'm generally hands-on on virtually every case, on every case. And so, I get involved personally. Not every law firm's like that, John Morgan, with all due respect to him, at Morgan & Morgan. I have a healthy respect for what they could do, but they do things differently than I do. John Morgan can't sit here and tell you about his cases over the last, 10 to 15 years because he's running a business. He's not.
He's a businessman.
What's that?
He's a businessman.
He's
not
a
lawyer
right.
anymore.
He's not.
He's a businessman.
He's quote unquote helping people, but in a different way, financial. He's probably a financial supporter. He's an employer. I enjoy my day-to-day role. I enjoy getting my hands dirty. I, on some level, don't even want anything in life to come easy to me. I kind of make it more difficult, unfortunately, at times because I enjoy the grind on some level. But I have an immense respect for the fact that people come to me when they don't really know what to do or how to help themselves, and that they rely on us to provide the help that they need. And that's how I see my role in the system. My role in the system is helping people that don't really have anywhere else to turn. And then once they're my client, they're trusting me to do right by them. And so I'm sort of their last hope to accomplish what it is that they seek to accomplish, and I take that very, very seriously.
Thank you.
It tells a lot about you. Like it's, by the way, that your staff loves you. everyone loves you. They're like, oh, he's the best boss.
It's because outside of litigation and outside of the courtroom, I'm a big pushover.
Yeah, big pushover. Yeah, they always say that. Oh, Brian, he's the best.
Right, because I'm not much of a disciplinarian. That's with my kids. That's with my employment staff. I try to kill them with love, and so on some level. And by the way, that does actually, in some way, translate to my litigation style. I prefer even to kill my adversaries with love. But it, sometimes it works out more often than not. But sometimes we got to change our approach. But with my staff. For better or for worse, I think I'm generally empathetic. I understand that we are dealing with some, I think, pretty unique issues these days. People have struggles, and we try to be understanding. I'm happy to hear that. I won't tell them you told me.
No worries. I don't think they'll get mad if you tell them.
But we certainly try hard to treat people in what we believe to be the right way.
Yeah, you're definitely a very empathetic human being. So. If you could, share a little bit of what you think of CONNEQT and how it has helped your team.
It's funny because in our practice, on the one hand, there's insurance companies and defendants. They often try to create these conspiracies between the lawyers and the doctors. That the doctors and the lawyers are trying to make the injuries worse than they really are just so they can get more money out of insurance companies. And like I told you earlier, there's a dignity to the truth. So I want to deal with my clients with the injuries they have. I want them to be treated for the injuries they have. I want them to get compensation for the injuries they have. We're not going to make stuff up. And the reason I mention that is because CONNEQT it's so user friendly in that the medical side is generally taken care of by the doctors. And so, a lot of lawyers want to get involved in the medicine, and I choose not to as a general matter. I want doctors making medical decisions with my clients, with the client's consent, based on the communications that they've had with their doctors. I don't think a lawyer should be telling a client whether they should be getting surgery, or whether a lawyer should be telling a client whether they should be getting injections. I want that decision made between doctor and patient. And so what CONNEQT has done so well is it's managed the treatment side of my clients' cases so that, on the one hand, they're getting the appropriate care. They have the ability to see a variety of types of doctors that are necessary in that care. And then the information is very clearly and easily communicated to my law firm so that I could use the facts, the realities of my client's injuries based on the assessments from the doctors. CONNEQT makes it very easy to get the information that I need to ultimately get my client the right result based on the injuries that they suffered and the treatment and care that they received through the doctors that CONNEQT has connected us with.
Yeah. Would you recommend CONNEQT to another attorney?
Absolutely. And just as you tell me that my staff loves me, I could tell you that my staff loves CONNEQT.
Aww, so cute. I love it. Love it, yes.
So CONNEQT gives us the opportunity, right? So every so often we'll get a client that's not in our, in our local community. And those clients sort of, on some level, depend on us to help them find a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so having access to CONNEQT, which has a broader network than I can have as a practicing attorney with my small staff, CONNEQT has contacts both throughout the state and throughout the country. It makes it easier for us to find treaters as necessary. And Florida is particularly unique because there's so many visitors that vacation here that somebody might get in an accident in Florida, but they're going to go home to treat. And so if somebody goes back to New York, or they go back to Chicago or wherever they came from to look for treatment options, it's not going to be a doctor that I know or that I've sent a patient to previously. It's going to be somebody in the vicinity of where that person lives. And we rely on the network through CONNEQT to help us identify potential treaters for injury actions in and around the locations where they came from.
Thank you. Well, that's the CONNEQT's life purpose, I would say. What's the purpose of CONNEQT? You say it perfectly.
Yeah,
that's our purpose.
It's been good. It's been good for me. It's been good for my staff, and it's the platform and the ability to access information has been really, really helpful to me and my team.
Thank you so much, Brian. Well, that's it for today at Connect to Disconnect podcast, and we'll see you next time.